You're late.
I know.
Like, really late.
I know.
And the team at its best stretch of the season while you were gone.
I know.
And are you even the tiniest bit worried that the team will lose all of its momentum right now? It's just a cruel twist of fate.
Actually, you might be right about that. Hi everyone, Sammy Flair here. Welcome back to Bolt Action, the series that, well, really got away from me. In all seriousness and sincerity, thank you to those of you who watch for just giving me some space and time. I've had a lot of things happen in my personal life recently that I had to deal with and just didn't have the capacity to really put any effort into this series right now. But we're not here to talk about any of that. If you want to see me treat the internet as a free therapy dumping session, then you can tune into me on Twitch every so often. No, we're here to talk Tampa Bay Lightning hockey, and we have missed quite a bit. There's a ton to cover, so let's just jump right into it. Last time I sat down in front of a camera and talked about this team, they had just played against the Vegas Golden Knights and beaten them on December 21st. Today is January 27th, so I've missed quite a lot. But in that time, there have been some positive things that have happened. The Tampa Bay Lightning are 10-5 since December 21st, including a 3-3 record on the road and an impressive 7-2 record at home. Boy, is that needed. They're back on the positive side of the goal differential, which I had remarked many times was actually impressive that they were ever on the minus side because they have one of the best offenses in the league and one of the best, actually the best power play in the league as of right now. But they were pairing it up with just awful defense. Awful. But they're back on the positive side at a +8 in goal differential right now. And perhaps most important, they are in a playoff position still. But instead of being in a wild card position as of today, they are third in the Atlantic with Toronto 1 point behind. Now that position is a little bit misleading because Toronto has played 3 fewer games than Tampa has at this point in the season. And assuming that Toronto would win all 3 of those games, it means that they would have, in fact, a 5-point lead instead of Tampa having a 1-point lead. But the silver lining to that is there's even cushion built into the wild card positions right now. They are 2 points ahead of Detroit, and Detroit has only played 1 fewer game than them. I'm not sure who the tiebreaker would actually go to if they were tied right now. But beneath that, the next closest team has 51 points. Tampa currently sitting at 57. So this is good. This may be not exactly where you want to be, but you are still in a playoff position. And for reasons that we will touch on a little bit later in this video, the odds are actually in your favor down the stretch for these final 33 games. We'll get there. Now, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for the team. There have been some bad things that have happened along the way, namely injuries. There are currently 4 names on the injured reserve or the long-term injured reserve. Those being Tanner Jeannot, Austin Watson, Mikhail Sergachev, and Hayden Fleury. And while you never want to see any of your players get injured, I think the Lightning have more flexibility in the forward group while Tanner Jeannot and Austin Watson are gone. It's no secret they have some of the best high-end talent that are bringing in goals night after night. So it's okay if your depth is a little bit banged up and shaken up. You also have prospects that you can throw in the mix. They have managed fairly well. I don't know the exact time frame for either Jeannot or Watson, but I did see that they were both back skating in practice today. So who knows? Maybe it's after the All-Star break. But the defensive injuries is where I started to get nervous. I noted in a previous video that Hayden Fleury, he has potential. He hasn't quite lived up to that potential as of yet, but he slots in fine as a replacement in case somebody goes down. But Mikhail Sergachev, that's a big loss. Now, I've heard reports that both Sergachev and Fleury are supposed to be making their way back after the All-Star break, so here's hoping we see them soon. But I know I wasn't the only person in the fan base that started just like tugging on the collar a little bit when we see Mikhail Sergachev on LTIR. Yikes. It's been no secret that the Lightning defense has struggled in the first half of this season. That's been one of my chief complaints while filming this series. It's right up there with how many turnovers that the Lightning have and how many times those turnovers lead directly to opposing goals. So losing your number 2 overall defenseman was cause for concern. And upon hearing that Sergachev went down, I started scratching my head and wondering, what on earth is Cooper going to do next? Who does he have to slot into that? Is he going to have to try to work with 5 defensemen on any given night and really put more of a workload on Victor Hedman? Come to find out, thankfully, the answer was no, they didn't do that. During the time I was gone, the Lightning called up 5 different defensemen, slotted them into the roster, and gave them all a chance at playing with the big boys. Among that group were three that I kind of figured were not going to be long-term solutions, at least not right now, including Philippe Myers, who has been a bit of a journeyman, even though he's early on in his NHL career. You had Declan Carlisle and Jack Thompson both on their entry-level contract. I think one of them is 21, the other one is 23. They both played a single game. Their first game in the NHL, congrats to them, but they haven't seen the ice since. But the two that have played the most games during this span, and the two that I think provide at this point the longest term value, are two guys also on their entry-level deals, and Maxwell Crozier, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, Emil Lilleberg. Both of them have been playing the bulk of the season with the Syracuse Crunch. Both of them have fairly similar numbers, both in the minors and at the NHL level. I think they both have 2 assists, but Crozier has played 6 games and Lilleberg has played 9 games. And if you're going to stick one of them on a pair with veteran leadership like Victor Hedman, it gives them a chance to learn the ropes and be a little bit more free in exploring their play style and figuring out exactly who they are as defensemen. And while you probably have not heard the name Maxwell Crozier unless you are a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, you may have seen one particular highlight of Emil Lilleberg, and I'm not sure that I can show it, but I'm going to attempt to anyway. Just watch.
But the Ducks come away with it. Leeson up the right side and goes. Lilleberg with a huge hit
on Brett Leeson. Going down the right wing side, there's Leeson. He's not looking. And Lilleberg comes across. There is nothing wrong with this hit because watch him come across here. That is shoulder on shoulder. Yeah, his head snaps back and he goes down. The collision at full speed. That's why I just burst out like, oh my goodness. And he just helicopters him.
Get the number of that truck! Emil Lilleberg lays a monster of a hit on Ducks forward Brett Leeson, and it's safe to say he never saw it coming. And look, you never want to joke about a player potentially getting injured, but oh my word, was it a massive hit. Just look at Brett Leeson attempt to get off the ice at that point. I don't know how the rest of his night went, but I can assure you he's going to remember Emil Lilleberg forever. On the offensive side, there hasn't been that much change as far as personnel. You call up a few prospects here and there, give guys a night off, give the prospects a shot at the big leagues, and we've seen because of that the reappearance of Valtteri Merula. He got his first NHL goal against Minnesota, congrats to him. We've seen Mitchell Chaffee in his first game of the season, and he got both a goal and an assist, both career firsts in a game against Arizona. And we saw one of the long-awaited prospects engage Gonçalves. He played 2 games against New Jersey and Anaheim, but grand total, I think he played 10 minutes between those 2 games. Didn't get on the score sheet at all, but still, as a method of getting into the game, congrats, kid, you made the show. Do you realize how rare that is to actually play in an NHL game? And even though the defense was a concern for me, and it was most definitely a concern for me, as I'm staring down potentially a long-term injury to Mikhail Sergachev and calling up a whole bunch of prospects and seeing how they're going to do, I gotta say, they are easily the most improved group on the whole team over the course of the last 5 or 6 weeks. Just in January alone, Darren Radish has tallied 4 goals. Nick Perbix has tallied a goal and 6 assists. I believe that's his first goal of his NHL career. It's not. He actually has 6, and I'm just being a hater. Okay, that sounds right. And Calvin DeHaan in the month of January, grabbing 2 goals and an assist. An impressive contribution from somebody who is almost always on the third pairing. But while the contributions on the score sheet are important, what is more important in my eyes is they are finding their identity as a group of blue liners. They are playing more responsibly. They are turning over the puck less. They are being more responsible in front of Vasilevsky and Jonas Johansson. Overall, they're just exhibiting the team defense that we all knew they were capable of, but it just took them a little bit longer this season to get going. So it's looking more positive in the very near future. But I have to make sure that I also recognize the contributions from the depth forwards, from your third and your fourth liners, because they are starting to contribute on the score sheet more than they have all season long. I'd have to go back and see if I can find the statistic from somewhere, but earlier on in this season, the Lightning's top 6 were contributing a ridiculous percentage of the team's goals. I think it was close to 80% or something like that, and that, thankfully, has come down. And that number isn't dropping because the top 6 are scoring fewer goals. That number is dropping because the bottom 6 are scoring more goals. These are good things. At last check, the Lightning top 6 are scoring 2 out of every 3 goals, a solid 66%, which means the remaining 33.33333333, you get the idea, is attributed to defensemen and bottom 6 forwards. And among that bottom 6, you've got 16 goals between Michael Eyssimont and Luke Glendening alone. They are splitting at 8 apiece. It's something that, once again, we knew they were perfectly capable of. We were just waiting for them to find out what the right chemistry is for the third line and the fourth line so that everybody could help find their own identity. They could gel together and then start putting pucks in the back of the net. And lo and behold, here we are. But of course, you cannot ignore the work of the goalies either. Andrei Vasilevskiy in particular, I know he had a rough start to the season, which makes sense. He had surgery in the offseason. He missed the first 20 games. He got off to a rocky start. However, his numbers have gotten better since then. He's put up 15 wins on the season. He's currently sitting at a 2.85 goals against average with a solid .900 save percentage. Look, not his best numbers by any means, but again, you got to give the man a lot of grace because he's coming fresh off of injury. And quite frankly, I think those numbers would be better if not for some stinker games against the Rangers and against the Bruins. From where I'm sitting, it looks like Vasi is feeling more like his old self again. He's getting reacquainted with playing and pushing through that injury and pushing through all of the rehab and everything that came along with it. I think he's setting himself up well for success. And because of now a more diminished workload, Jonas Johansson is also playing better. That's not at all to say that this team is perfect. It is far from perfect. There are still plenty of things that need to be addressed, plenty of things that need to be worked on, and potentially some moves to be made at the trade deadline, but we are still several weeks away from that. But at the beginning of the season, during the first half of this season, it felt like things were chaotic and they were crowded. Part of that felt like the Lightning were just playing more often than any other team, which actually was true. As of today, and at the end of today, no team will have played more games in the first half of this season than the Lightning, though a few would have matched them like Colorado. By and large, most NHL teams are going to play pretty much the same schedule. There's going to be a little bit of fluctuation based on what division you're in and what conference you're in, but everybody is going to play everybody at some point during the season. But both with the crowded schedule on the first half of the season and the Lightning seemingly running into every single hot team in the first half of the season, it just felt like they couldn't catch a break. The schedule just felt like they were playing really tough teams early on, and then they would have the occasional relief game just kind of sprinkled in there. Like back in October, for instance, it was Vancouver, Toronto, Carolina, San Jose. And then 1 month later in November, it's Edmonton, Boston, Winnipeg, Carolina, Colorado, Arizona. And I get the feeling that the second half of the season is going to be basically the mirror image of that. You're going to be playing fewer games because you played a lot more in the first half. You're going to be playing some easier teams along the way, and then you'll have your competition sprinkled in every 3, 4, 5 games. Case in point, starting today, the Lightning will play the Devils at home, then they'll go on the road for back-to-back against the Rangers and the Islanders, then go to Columbus. Then you have 3 really tough games in Boston, at home against Colorado, at home against Florida. And then to finish out February, you have home games against Ottawa, Washington, and Buffalo, and road games against the Islanders, the Devils, and the Flyers. Also in their favor, the Lightning only have 4 road games left against Western Conference teams. They got most of it out of the way in the first half of the season. They have to go to Vegas, then do the California trip of San Jose, LA, and Anaheim. They also only have 5 back-to-back sets of games in the second half of the season, which is going to take a big load off. It means that basically for the rest of the way, they're going to have an average of about, 2.5 to 3 days of rest in between every single game. It's gonna allow them to prepare better for every single game. And I mentioned early on in the video that I think Tampa has the odds in its favor for making a playoff push in the second half of the season, and this is why. All of the reasons I just mentioned factor into the Lightning's strength of schedule for the rest of the season. As of today, they have the 9th easiest schedule for the remainder of the season, for their final 33 games. But it's not just their strength of schedule I'm looking at, I'm also looking at the division rival strength of schedule. Boston and Toronto for the rest of the season are number 2 and 3. They have the 2nd and 3rd hardest strength of schedule for the remainder of the season. Detroit and Florida, respectively, 11th and 13th. So all 4 of Tampa's division rival, the teams that they are trying to leapfrog to get into the playoffs, are in the top half of the hardest strength of schedule for the remainder of the season. So with all of that laid out in front of them, they have a golden opportunity to continue turning things around as they have over the course of the last 15 games. If they can keep up momentum, get some good winning streaks or point streaks here and there along the way, I think they're going to find themselves in the playoffs, but it's still far too early to get complacent about that. There's work to be done. They're perfectly capable of doing it. It just needs to be done. I want to mention two things before I get out of here for this video. Number one, the Lightning released an alternate jersey for the City of Tampa's Gasparilla celebration, and I'm so disappointed that I didn't get one of these. It's so sick. It was on limited release. I'm upset, but I also couldn't afford it, even if I had gotten a spot in line. But this is one of the best jerseys that they've ever put out, and I need one. If anybody has one, you're willing to sell it to me, hit your girl up. Secondly, as of today, the race for the top scorer in the NHL is essentially a two-horse race at this point. As of right now, Nathan MacKinnon is 1 point ahead of Nikita Kucherov. MacKinnon at 84, Kucherov at 83. But MacKinnon was in action last night. He's off today. Kucherov is in action today against the Devils, and MacKinnon is off. So it seems like it's changing hands every single day, but it should be a really exciting race to watch play out for the rest of the season. I obviously am hopeful for Kucherov, but I mean, it's good competition. This is going to be fun. But that's it. That's all I got for this video. I need to shut this down and go edit it and push it out so that both of my viewers tomorrow can watch this video. If you find yourself amongst that camp, thank you again very much for watching. Thank you for continuing to give me just a little bit of your time. It means the world to me. I told myself that I wanted to be committed and do a video every week for the Lightning, and life got in the way, but I'm back on the horse and I'm here to see this through to the end as much as it is within my power. But until I see you again, remember, go Bolts, and check out the All-Star game coming up next week. It should be a lot of fun. Just do your best to ignore the jerseys. They're ugly. Justin Bieber helped design them. Come on.